Welcome back, gang. It's Deltia from Deltiasgaming.com, and Midyear Mayhem's just around the corner, and I wanted to give you an update for the most popular PvP build on my website. So in this video, I'm going to try my best to quickly go over how I run this build. In fact, there's 3 different ways I play it. I play it with a 1vx loadout, mainly for solo play in battlegrounds, small instance-based PvP, or when you need a lot of survivability and a lot of pressure. I play it in another way, which is mainly for small groups. This is for bombing and what I would be using for Midyear Mayhem going forward, where I just change out essentially 1 or 2 skills along with some gear sets, very easy to put together. And then lastly, but certainly not least, is a 2-handed carve/brawler build using Dark Convergence and the Master's 2H, which I will show you a little bit in detail as well. So if you want the Apex Predator in the Elder Scrolls Online currently, I highly recommend sticking tuned to this build video. It will make a lot of sense. It's very easy, very simple, and it's not going anywhere in the Necrom chapter or the futures of Elder Scrolls. If you get something out of this video, hit that thumbs up. Check the website, because I can always update that. Midyear Mayhem's supposed to be in mid-May and then late June, depending on how the console hardware refresh goes. EU just got theirs done, Xbox NA and PlayStation NA pretty soon, allegedly. So you're gonna wanna pick this up soon. Here we go. So the first build up, what I play is what I call the 1vx loadout. This is simply something that is very, very sturdy and has a ton of single target pressure. It lacks in the AoE department, but you can basically just make one specific change. So we're gonna go with the skill bar first, and this is working left to right. I'll tell you about my skills and how I use them. First up, I use a dual wield setup for both of these 2 I'm about to show you, the 1vx and the group play. The reason why is I love dual wield skills, and I love the way it performs. 2-hander is very, very good though, so don't sleep on it. This is just my preferred. Working left to right, the first skill up is Shattering Rocks. I take this for a little extra heal. This is mainly my crowd control, group utility, lockdown skill. So for solo play, Shattering Rocks is the play here. The flex spot in the skill department is Burning Talons. Burning Talons cost a ton of magic, but it does do great AoE damage and it procs a synergy. So if you're playing with other group members and you don't need a hard stun, switch to Burning Talons. But you need some method of controlling either a single target or multiple targets. Fossilize the other morph of Shattering Rocks just gives immobilization afterwards, which is very useful. Now I have Molten Whip on my skill bar, and this essentially is my main spam. I actually don't use it a whole lot. I use it mainly for a kill shot after I have 3 stacks. If you don't know how the skill works, casting Ardent Flame's abilities give it a stack, up to 3, making it hit harder and increasing your weapon and spell damage by 100 for 15 seconds. So you can actually leave 3 stacks up on your bar to get a big whip, but make sure you don't noob missile this move. Your important thing to do is when you go for a kill shot is not stun a target right away and give them CC immunity. What you want to do is load them up with dots, get them around 70, 60% HP, stun, big whip. That's the kill shot with this build, because as I have it set up for the 1vx, I don't have an execute, so you're going to have to let your dot pressure and then the reaction time of breaking free along with the whip do the work for you. Noxic Breath is the next skill. It applies Major Breach. It does a lot of damage, massive AoE conal, and it gets people out of stealth very, very easy. Love this skill. Flames of Oblivion. While slotted, you're gonna get your crit buff. You can cast it preemptively and kind of buff up with it. It does good AoE damage, and it's kind of a delayed burst utility because it's 15-second duration. So you can cast it, and then randomly every 5 seconds it's gonna hit 3 people like a truck. Plus it has 15-meter range, so you can actually spam it and use it as a magic dump if you're low on stamina and need an AoE skill. Next up is Rending Slash. So this is the flex skill on your bar depending on the weapon you load out you choose. This with the Master's dual wield is absolutely insane damage. So what it does is bleed damage, but more importantly applies the hemorrhage status effect, which does a lot for you with this specific build. It's absolutely obnoxious pressure, single target, and an absolute go-to. What I swap out when I'm playing with a small group is Spin to Win Whirling Blades. I use this in a different 5-piece gear set that I'm going to get to in a little bit. Or if you like this 1vx loadout, but you just don't have Master's weapons, you don't like using them, you really want to execute, I've used the Asylum weapons before. The Asylum weapons give you this chaotic wind effect, which will actually make you faster, and does increase your weapon and spell damage. It has a 5-second little tiny proc, so you have to kind of keep spinning and winning when you use this. But if you like that and want to execute rather than a little bit more dot pressure, good skill. And then moving along to the ultimate choice, that's Ferocious Sleep. The reason why it's a good offensive and defensive tool, the Take Flight ability will have a higher tooltip, will do more damage, but I like to play tanky, so I go with that. Moving along to our back bar. On the 1vx playstyle, I do change things up a bit. So I use a Frost Staff. And the reason why I use a Frost Staff, one, you can build up magic at range doing fully charged heavy attacks. You can proc your enchant. You can lighter heavy attack to generate ultimate. It does a lot for you. And you get block mitigation similar to Sword and Shield. So fantastic choice, especially having the range. First ability up on our bar is Volatile Armor. This gives you your armor buff. It also releases a spike doing flame damage, which is very important. Next up, we have Degeneration. This is what I do flex in or flex out. If I'm using the 1vx build, I'll use Degeneration. It gives weapon and spell damage, actually a really strong hard-hitting dot single target. But the other skill, Igneous Weapons, is really nice because it comes from the Earthen Heart, so it's going to proc a lot of important passives like Minor Brutality, but also you can cast it before combat starts and kind of pre-buff. So Degeneration just requires you to use a cooldown when you start getting in combat, but that dot pressure, do not sleep on it. It's fantastic. So consider this your weapon damage slot. Igneous Weapons, if someone else is running it in the group, you have an extra bar space slot for whatever you want to run and what you like. Now, on the back bar, we get to Elemental Susceptibility. This is one of my favorite, if not my favorite ability in the game currently. It gives Major Breach, which is actually similar to Noxious Breath on our front bar, but it gives the Burning Shield and Concuss status effect. That burning status effect is super important for the Dragonknight due to the combustion passive, feeding our magic sustain, plus it's great dot pressure, and the shield and concuss status effects mean they're just going to take a lot more damage. You can cast it at range, and it costs nothing. Now, we're going to pair this with the Vatashram Staff, so it's basically going to attach a laser beam to the target and proc those 3 status effects, doing a massive amount of damage. Consider this your flex spot if you're playing in a group and not using the Vatashram setup. Next ability up on our bar is Coagulating Blood. This is our burst heal, so you're really going to use this below 60 or 70% health to pop you back up. And then another ability, Resolving Vigor, is the Minor Armor or Minor Resolve skill. So you can stack the minor and major buffs together, making you extraordinarily tanky, hitting right around 29,000 depending if you're a Nord resistances. Now I pair the Stamina Resolving Vigor heal with the Burst Heal Coagulating Blood. So if I run out of magic, I have a way to heal myself. If I run out of stamina, I have a way to heal myself. And something else that's really cool about this build is if you use Frost Staff on the back and Duel on the front, you have 2 methods to get back resource pool. Just do a fully charged heavy attack with Duel build, get stamina back. Do a full heavy charge with the Frost Staff, get magic back. You should be able to balance your resources with fully charged heavy attacks. Also, the Battle Roar passive when you use ultimate will burst you up. Using a tripod, or if you're using Heroism pots, that's the big brain tool, because Battle Roar ultimate generation will give you back resources. So think Heroism, whatever potion you're going to use, it's how you resource sustain on this build. Last ability up is Corrosive Armor, and this thing is an absolute juggernaut. So it ignores physical and spell resistances for direct damage abilities, not your dots, but this allows you to do big direct damage. Think about big whips with this. It's also going to cap the damage taken. It basically just carries you absolutely incredibly. So you're going to pop this on your back bar, typically when you go on the offensive, if you have enough ultimate, or you're just getting pressured and need to survive. We're going to go to the gear next of the main build that I play, and I'll show you a couple of other versions of this. But we're going to use a 5-piece honor body at all times. Mara's Bomb. Now, this is going to get nerfed in Necrom pretty significantly, and the thing that's going to get nerfed about it is the cleanse. With this particular build, if you see the gear chart right here, yeah, let's put it right there. What this does is we're going to put it on our body at all time. Mara's Bomb is going to constantly get you healed when you're getting dot pressure or someone's reapplying or applying brand new dots. So you're going to get healed quite a bit of time. Now, it's going to suck missing out on that big, huge cleanse every 15 seconds, which it's now on the live server, versus in Necrom every 30 seconds. But it actually will still heal us quite a bit and still give us a cleanse when we need to. A great alternative to Mara's Bomb that we used to use for absolutely ever is Daedric Trick Daddy. Daedric Trickery, craftable set. It gives you a lot of the major buffs. It also gives you major heroism, which you can stack with minor heroism potions to make you an ultimate generating machine. Then you can kind of essentially live in Corrosive Armor and survive that way. So if you love the DK and figure it's just Mara's Bomb that's carrying your survivability, don't listen to the trolls on YouTube. They lying to you. So we're gonna do Mara's Bomb on the body at all times. That's gonna leave one piece trainee for extra health, and one piece druids for extra health. And then we're gonna go with the perfected stinging slashes, which is basically the master's weapons. I'm gonna go with the mace in one hand and the axe in the other, sharpened and Nirnhorn, or you can do sharpened and charge with flame and poison damage. Back bar, we're gonna do perfected Wraith of Elements, and that's from Vatashram Hollows. You can do the normal version if you want. And then the mythic choice is up to you. You're gonna do two Mara's Bomb jewelry, but you can do Sea Serpent Coil. It's gonna snare you and be super annoying. We do not have a source of major expedition on our bar, so we have to use potions for it, have to have a Nightblade in our group, or have to slot a skill and drop something that's very, very useful. So people don't like Sea Serpent's Coil because it is quite annoying to deal with that until you learn to properly line of sight. Some other options for you would be Markins is really good. Death Dealer's Fate I actually used on PCU for quite a bit because I didn't have anything else, to be honest with you. Torque will actually carry your resource sustain. And Wild Hunt, if you have the Antiquity system unlocked, you can get in like 1 hour just to make you really quick. Something's better than nothing. Now, on the jewelry traits, I recommend Bloodthirsty if you want the ultimate massive amount of damage. Swift is nice to counter the Sea Serpent Coil Snare, and Infused for pure weapon damage, and that will actually help you resource sustain. Back bar, I go Powered, and then we've already talked about the front weapons. Well fitted and a couple reinforced, if not just one reinforced in the chest. I'm not a big fan of Impenetrable, and the reason why is you don't get much value for actually an armor slot when you could use Well Fitted or Sturdy if you block a lot. Well Fitted is going to allow you to do dodge rolls like nobody's business and not cost much stamina. That's fantastic if we're using Sea Serpent's Coil because we don't have a lot of mobility. Plus, you get like 100% evade on most attacks. It will carry your survivability just being able to dodge, line of sight, get that stupid snare off you on Sea Serpent's Coil, and then go back into the action. Sturdy is also really good. Divines is really good. If you're just getting absolutely nuked and blown up and you swear by Impenetrable, use it, but I don't use it a whole lot. And then I use Prismatic Glyphs on the head, chest, and legs. And then make sure you have a weapon damage glyph on your back bar so you can proc it as you move in. And then last but certainly not least is the disgusting Marsalok Monster Helm. So what this does is when you do a heavy attack in melee range, you spew a Cone of Corruption, essentially doing a hard-hitting dot that can be increased by 10% for each negative effect. Now, if you follow along with the build, Rending Slash, Vatashram Hollows procs an absolute crap ton of status effects and will melt targets like absolute peanut butter and jelly. Let me jump in the game to show you how this works so you clearly understand before we switch gears and talk about another build. Okay, we're on the Sweaty Spaghetti Stamina Dragonknight 1vx build. So kind of what I do to first start is I kind of build up my stacks on the front bar. So I'll use either Flames of Oblivion a couple times or I'll use Noxious Breath just to get that 3 stacks ready to go. Now, when you close the distance, you kind of have an important choice. Typically I go 1, 2, and I put the generation on the target. As I close the distance, if I can, I actually cast my Volatile Armor because that's another dot, right? And then you do Vatashram. Go to your front bar, 1, 2, and look at the status effects. Look at those. Boosh! And then you hit them with the fully charged or medium weave heavy attack and that Marsalok procs. You can see the cooldowns on the bottom middle of my screen. That's a add-on for that. And it kind of tells me what it does. The add-on name, because you're going to ask me, is EXOY's proc set timer. If you're a proc sweat like me, you got to have this add-on. So again, you close the distance, armor, debuff, 1, 2, 3, medium weave stun, if you can, and then leap for the kill shot. Or you can do corrosive armor as you go in. And that's essentially kind of how you play this. Now, you use Resolving Vigor, and then you use this guy for your healing along with keeping your armor buff up. So that has 2 armor buffs with it. Something really important that's absolutely obnoxiously expensive, but will make a huge difference in your build is running these potions. Essence of Magic, but it gives you magic and stamina back, and Minor Heroism. That's extraordinary. It will carry your resource sustain because Marsalok doesn't have any resource sustain component. And if you really struggle with it and you can't afford, go with Bloodspawn Monster Helm. And the reason Bloodspawn is so fantastic, it gives you ulti, it gives you some mitigation once in a while, and it gives you stamina recovery in the one piece. You're not gonna have as much damage, but you're gonna basically feed your ultimate a lot more, allowing you to live in corrosive. Again, if you pop an ultimate, DKs are all about ultimate via your Battle Roar. So you want to find ways to build ultimate. And the most key way to build ultimate is constantly cast Earth and Heart abilities, whether you slot Igneous Weapon instead of Generation, or you slot Shattering Rocks. A really good skill here is Cinderstorm. It will chew through your magic, but great survivability if you want to be very, very slow. So using those skills, you're going to get stamina back, you're going to get Minor Brutality, which stacks with Major Brutality from the Generation, and you're going to get ultimate back every 6 seconds. How I generate the ultimate a lot is just using this annoying stun on people all the time. It will do a really, really good job of building that ultimate and maintaining high uptime on Minor Brutality. So that's the super sweaty single target setup. And let's switch gears and talk about what I've shown you probably in a lot of the footage is you see Plaguebreak going off. And this is what I use when I'm playing like super sweaty, small group type of stuff. I use the Plaguebreak loadout. Simply all I do is put a 5-piece Mara's Bomb on my back bar and put a 5-piece Plaguebreak on my front bar, and then use a mythic of choice. On EU server, I haven't even used Sea Serpent Coil. Typically I use Markin, and I change the skills out. So let's jump back in the game, show you how that works. Just realize that this is not going to be good in a 1v1 situation. It's meant to play in a small group or to go into keep fights, BGs, and absolutely bomb groups. Okay, before we get in the attributes and the Mundus Stone and everything else, we're going to switch gears and talk about the Plaguebreak kind of bomber setup and what I run. So all I do with the Plaguebreak setup is I just basically change my weapons to Plaguebreak. You can run maces, swords, daggers, whatever you want. Just depends really how you're going to live in corrosive armor. Reason why, corrosive armor, again, direct damage, it's going to ignore physical and spell resistance. So if you're planning to pop corrosive armor all the time and do spin to win, which is really what this build is designed for, you don't necessarily have to use the maces. So feel free to think big brain. Maces, when in doubt, are just going to penetrate armor and be very, very useful for you in all situations. Swords are a bit more niche. An axe in the offhand can come in very handy, or daggers if you're running a Khajiit like me is also a good play. There's more than one way to use this build, but for the sake of this, we got Plaguebreak Mauls on. So all I do is run Plaguebreak Maces rather, and then I have 3 pieces of Plaguebreak well-fetted on my body, so it's only active when I'm on my front bar. And then we go to Mara's Bomb, which is active on the eye staff, it's active on the chest, and then I have 2 jewelry pieces with it. So you can run Swift to kind of counteract the slowness of Sea Serpent Coil, or you can run Markins with a little bit of trick. So the real reason you're running Sea Serpent Coil primarily is to get Major Berserk. Major Courage is really nice as well. Dragonknights have, well, you guessed it, Major Berserk built into their class kit, because why wouldn't they? So on the back bar, you can try to drop that elemental susceptibility skill, because most likely you don't run in Vatashram Hollows, and you're going to have the source of Major Breach anyways. And so what you can do is run this Change of Devastation on the back bar, and then bar swap cancel and swap. And that's going to give you a big, massive boost to Major Berserk if you cannot stand Sea Serpent Coil and you want some mobility. You can also run a Vampire, which is really, really useful as well. Vampire just going to tank your resource sustain, and Siege is going to hit you like a jackhammer. And if you want Major Expedition, you're not running with a Nightblade using Twisting Path, Refreshing Path, there's always good old Psijic Order Race Against Time. It will tank your resource sustain. One final option for your front bar is the other morph of Deadly Cloak from Dual Wield. Quick Cloak actually gives you Major Expedition. So those are 3 sources, and you will really need to be quick in a small group to be able to get away, hit bombs, and so forth. And you can also use, well, potions. The only downside about potions giving Major Expedition, it's only 15 seconds max, roughly, with a 45-second cooldown, so you really have to time them. But I use immovability potions. So what we change on our bar is simply putting Spin to Win in our 5 key instead of Rending Slashes. So we want big, massive AoE kills. Speaking of big, massive AoE kills, we're going to drop Fossilize or Shattering Rocks, whatever morph, and we're going to go with Burning Talons. Reason why, you want Burning Talons to lock people into place, but your teammates to hit the synergy. That's what blows up when you see these clips. And then on the back bar, what you're going to have is Igneous Weapons. Reason why you're going to use Igneous Weapons, it's a group utility weapon. So you really want the group to be able to get utility and drop that extra dot. That's really not what you're looking for in this specific build. And then 1 source of speed. Elusive Mist, Chains of Devastation, Race Against Time. And then last change I make is I use Shifting Standard most of the time. So that's going to come from the Ardent Flame. People sleep on this skill, but it lasts forever. So if you stack major and minor heroism with the potions, along with Data Trickery and the potions, getting both of those sources, you can just roll Shifting Standard along with leaps, basically countlessly. Also, you can have someone else run Drake's Rush in your group if you don't want to run some of those item sets, and it's just fantastic ultimate gen, major defile, and you guessed it, the Shackle synergy. And really the group play is all built on essentially synergies, because you have Undaunted Command giving you back resources when you use synergies, but it's free damage and it doesn't really cost a global cooldown. So you have every 20 seconds to hit Burning Talon synergy, every 20 seconds to hit a Shackle synergy, every 20 seconds hit a Soul Tether synergy. You see where I'm going with this? So even 3 to 4 player groups can really hit and bomb massive groups with this specific loadout. And that's why. Build towards synergies, and if you use them appropriately, especially with one healer, you will be incredible big damage. And then last but not least, we're going to talk about the 2H Carve / Brawler Bomber, which is kind of popularized, but I'll just give you my take on it and how I run it. Might be a little bit different than others. Here it is. Okay, we're back on the build, and this is my Dragonknight, what I usually play, the Butcher. And so this is kind of a popularized build with kind of a lot of different options, but basically the first thing it centers around is the Master's Greatsword from Dragonstar Arena. Very old content, but the weapons are fantastic. Increase the direct damage of cleave deals by each enemy hit in the cone. So this skill, you can run a couple different morphs. I have the Brawler one because it just gives a big shield, and it just smacks people in a cone. So you're going to make a pull. You're going to have a pull set, which is good old Dark Convergence. So this, I run an Ice Staff, like always, powered, and I chuck down a rune. Now, the rune that you're going to use is going to be a Volcanic Rune, and this is from the Mages Guild. So that's going to do is going to place something on the ground, which is going to proc Dark Convergence. Then it's going to suck everybody in and then blast up in 2 seconds. That delayed stun is really useful because you don't really have a delayed stun like Mass Hysteria or something. I also use Rush of Agony set. That does a pull as well, but you have to use a gap closer. So I've done Stampede on the back bar with Rush of Agony. Didn't seem to have the survivability, and it just felt like the Dark Convergence works much better on the DK. Anyways, so same exact skills minus that. And in the front bar, roughly the same exact skills. I do use Talons for an Immobilize, but I use Brawler. Something to note with Brawler, if you're going to play this build, this Reaving Blows passive will actually heal you pretty big in PvP if you hit a bunch of people. So how it looks is you just basically get all buffed up, and typically you want to hit a Corrosive Armor before you go YOLO charging in. But you're just going to get this guy up, and then you basically chuck it in here. It pulls him, and you kind of rip back a fully charged heavy attack, and then boom, just start smashing them. And so if you're in Corrosive Armor, that direct damage, you're going to have 100% penetration. So that's why I have the Nirnhone trait on here rather than Sharpen. And that's why I'm using a Greatsword rather than a Maul, because I'm assuming you're going to be in Corrosive Armor and you don't need any penetration because you're doing just direct damage, big slaps with Carve, and it will absolutely body people. I don't run this a whole lot because I just like the Plaguebreak Mara setup, and I like to be super tanky and survivable. And I don't feel like I need a pull as a lot to blow up huge groups on my Dragonknight. Let's finish up the build, and I basically run kind of the same sorts of different attributes in Mundus Stone. So basically 30 and 34 is a good split, 32 and 32. It really depends on your race, if you have a race that has max HP or not. So that's kind of it. I ride around about 32,000 HP I highly recommend for the average player. And then we go down here. The Mundus Stone is entirely up to you, okay? So I'm going for Thief for a little bit of burst, but the Warrior Mundus Stone is great. And the reason why the Warrior Mundus Stone is good is you're a Dragonknight. So you get an extra little boost to Minor Brutality. Now this is for you and your group, but you need to assume you're going to play solo. So the Dragonknight leans into weapon damage because you can get 10% more along with the major benefit in your class kit. Thief, Shadow, Lover, also really good and have their places. Just depends on how bursty you want to get rather than consistent heals. So when in doubt, just stick with the Warrior. It's a good thing to use. Okay, so we have Dark Convergence on our back bar, we got Masters on our front bar, and then I got Plaguebreak on my body, and then I personally use Gaze of Sithis. So you can either use Gaze of Sithis or a Monster Helm. You can use Balorgs if you want, but you already get 100% penetration, so that doesn't seem very good. You can use Bloodspawn as well, and believe it or not, Zols can be pretty good. Most people sleep on Zols, but especially if you're going to bomb huge groups and not use immovability potions, this is actually fantastic. Comes from Imperial City, but when you break free, it stuns everybody in 8 meters and it fears them. So they're like not going to know what hit them, and that allows you to basically bomb them if they try to like counter stun you. You'd be shocked at how good that works. But Gaze of Sithis Mythic will allow you to be super tanky and not get blown up by this guy. Now Mundus Stone, I had the Thief equipped because I want burst on this Carve build, but you'd really should be using the Warrior Mundus Stone for the majority of these builds. And the reason why is you get this Mountain Blessing, Minor Brutality. So that's going to increase your weapon damage by 10%, where you don't have something built in for crit unless you're playing a Khajiit, and that will influence your healing and your damage, and that stacks with the major buff. So the Dragonknight really benefits from getting major and minor. So I highly recommend that passive, and using the Warrior Munda Stone. Thief will be a bit bursty, especially if you're using a Khajiit. And also Lover Munda Stone can be really good. On all these builds, I pretty much use Jewels of Mistru, or I use Smoked Bear Haunch, which is a more expensive version of this. As far as food goes, Jewels is actually dirt cheap. You can get it from traders like very, 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 very cheap. But it basically increases your stamina, magic recovery, and gets you a bit of max health. So that's useful to have basically the buy or try recovery, because you're playing a Dragonknight, not stamina, not magicka really. You basically have like about 5 skills of each, it feels like. And this particular build, almost you could call it a magic Dragonknight. And you're probably like, well, why don't you use magic as your resource pool? As the reason why is whatever my main spammable is what I use my attributes for. So I'm doing Spin to Win, Whirling Blades. I'm using Carve. I'm using those type of skills. I'm going to use a stamina-based attribute pool. If I'm using like Deep Breath, Draw Essence, and using more magic AoE damage, Burning Talons, then I go with a magic resource pool. So really, this class could be considered stamina, even though I probably have more magic abilities on it rather than not, but it still resource sustains. Champion points. So there's a lot of champion points to go over, but the number one for bombing is Occulta Overload. It's fantastic. So if you're going to do the bombing setup, I highly recommend this. And then maybe Masters at Arms or another damage producing one. If you're running the 1vx setup, do not sleep on Force of Nature. If you have a lot of status effects, look what it gives you. 666 pen for every status effect your target has. We've seen how many status effects we can get. That's big damage for pretty easy. Now, if we go back, the defensive ones I highly recommend are Ironclad here, and then Duelist Rebuff if you want to be really tanky. Or the Reaving Blows if you're using the Carve. And then don't sleep on Focus Many if you want big, massive coagulating blood. So when in doubt, a couple offensive, even Fighting Finesse on my Khajiit is really good. Check the website for the specifics that I go, but really it's kind of flexible for which of the 3 builds you're running. Coming over here, guess what? It's also flexible. But the first one I always run is the Fortified passive here. Now, if you're a new player and you struggle with Break Free or you're playing with lag, do not skip this one here, Slippery. On PCU, I use this because it used to be laggy before the servers got refreshed, and you'll break free. You can also combine that with Zols. It'll break you free and stun everybody around you. It's absolutely insane for bombing. People never see it coming. Automatic break free and stuns everyone around you. Hello? Counter to gankers as well. Juggernaut's an okay one if you're getting CC'd, and then down here, Pain's Refuge, Sustained by Suffering, and Relentless. All of these are fantastic. So Pain's Refuge is great if you're not using Mara's Bomb. Sustained by Suffering, also good if you're not using Mara's Bomb. Relentless is fantastic if you don't have major protection, because when you break free, usually that's when someone's going to try to kill you. It's a great way to counter that. And then coming over here to Celerity, this is a good way to counter Sea Serpent's Coil as well. So typically what I go with, depending if I'm playing with lag, is Fortified, Slippery, and then I usually do Relentless, and then one Flex one, depending on my needs. So Survival Instincts is really good, or Celerity. And that's kind of the champion points. The greens really doesn't affect combat too much. As far as races go, if we come here, Nord is going to be super tanky. So max health, frost resistance, max stamina, and it generates ultimate. That is extraordinarily unique because it's not a name buff. It's not major, it's not minor. So you can use those potions, you can use Data Trickery, and you can have the ultimate generating machine. But it's not going to have as much damage. It has physical and spell resistance. It's not going to have as much damage as a Dunmer. It's not going to have as much damage as a Khajiit. Khajiit's going to be super bursty. Dunmer is going to be great if you'd rather play magic or stamina one day or tank and heal the other day. I love the Dunmer and the Khajiit all around. Khajiit is probably my favorite race though, and I just hit huge damage with the critical damage passive, and I usually use the Thief Munda Stone. So again, Nord's good for being super tanky, Khajiit for high burst, Dunmer is more balanced, and then Imperial's probably the best for pure resource sustain. Last call, we're going to talk about potions. So you can do a couple of different potions for immovability. So if you're like in a sweaty, like super try-hard focus group, you need to time all your ultimates, and you just don't want to risk being CC'd. So something like this, it gives major evasion if you're not rocking that skill. Also, something like this is crazy good. Major Expedition, Restoring Stamina, and Minor Heroism. And I already showed you the other one, which was Stamina, Magic, and Minor Heroism. I actually don't even know how to make that. The homie sent me one, so I appreciate it, but it's going to cost you a lot if it has Minor Heroism in it. And if you don't know what to use, you can always just slot a good old tripod on you, and that will work just fine. But if you're not going to run the buffs, like the weapon damage buff or the critical damage, you're going to need a potion to get those buffs. It'll increase your damage dramatically. Well, gang, that's a build. Check the website, link in the description below. I can update the website every day if I find something new. I cannot update this YouTube video. So if you see this and the website's a little bit different, the reason why is I can change that very easily. So always go with the website for the latest and greatest information. Also, speaking of latest and greatest, come to twitch.tv/Deltiasgaming where my mom claims I'm the best streamer alive. We'll see you at Midyear Mayhem. Appreciate you.